An incredible offer exposed. A life and a valiant Apache woman at a price no one expected. Marisol stared at the letter, its crisp paper and elegant script contrasting sharply with the dust and decay outside her small Arizona home. A scholarship from a prestigious university, all expenses paid. She had never imagined such an opportunity would land on her doorstep, like a snake shedding its skin. But with each word she read, doubt slithered into her heart. Did they think she wasn't aware of the implications, the sacrifices she'd have to make? The sun hung high above the desert, a relentless overseer, but inside her mind, confusion swirled like the winds outside. Marisol's past tugged at her, a life spent pushing against the boundaries set by others. Her family's expectations, the judgments of her peers, the harsh realities of a town steeped in poverty and prejudice. She had always fought, working tirelessly for her community, but now faced with this letter, the fight felt even more daunting. Who was she to claim a space in those hallowed halls? "What will it cost me?" she murmured, the echo of her own voice thick with emotion. A bitter taste washed over her. The scholarship could lift her from the stagnant waters of economic inequality, but might also demand her loyalty, her connection to her people. As excitement danced on the edge of her determination, so too did a fierce anxiety. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Marisol stepped onto the bustling campus, adrenaline coursed through her. The air buzzed with the energy of possibility, but sharpened with the sting of judgment. Undeniably out of place, she felt every gaze, every whisper that brushed past her. In classrooms where respectability was woven into familial legacies, she couldn't silence the thoughts screaming in her mind, "You're not worthy, you'll fail." Her pulse quickened when she crossed paths with a rival, an entitled man born into privilege. "Oh look, a charity case," he sneered, reveled in his smugness. Each word pierced her heart, a reminder of her difference, of the hurdles stacked high against her. But she found a flicker of hope in Professor Eldridge, an eccentric mentor whose eyes sparkled with understanding rather than condescension. He recognized her strength in traditional knowledge and pushed her to pursue an innovative research project that blended her ancestral wisdom with environmental science. Yet each moment of clarity twisted within her. The weight of her past battled fiercely with her ambitions. Then came a bombshell. An unethical land deal that threatened the sacred grounds of her ancestors. The discovery rattled Marisol, her resolve slipping as she envisioned the laughter of her family gathering there, the plants she had treasured since childhood, and the harsh reality of losing it all. This place represented so much more than land. It was history, heritage. And now, her dream came at this ghastly cost. With silence wrapping itself around her like chains, Marisol stood on the edge of her future. Torn between two worlds, her body clenched in protest, her heart hammering against her chest, she faced a dilemma that felt insurmountable. Would she betray her people for a chance to succeed? A flicker of hope burned alongside a shadow of despair as Marisol prepared to fight back. The echoes of the desert winds whispered through her, urging her to stand strong, yet doubts curled around her mind. In this moment, as the stakes rose higher, she had to decide between a future that shimmered brightly, or one that preserved the stories of her ancestors. The canyon held its breath, and so did she. Marisol stood at the brink of a monumental decision, her heart tangled in a web of conflicting emotions. The campus around her buzzed with ambition and opportunity, yet she felt ensnared by the weight of expectation, both from her community and the institution that promised her a path forward. With each passing moment, the reality of her predicament deepened. The very land that nurtured her spirit was now under siege, and the dichotomy of her existence felt more perilous than ever. Determined, she sought solace in her research. The project Professor Eldridge had assigned her became a sanctuary, a place to channel her frustration. As she delved into the intricacies of sustainable practices rooted in her Apache heritage, Marisol began to uncover a reservoir of strength within herself. Each concept she studied resonated with the teachings of her ancestors. It was as if their whispers guided her hands as she scribbled notes and diagrams. But that determination came with a voice inside, a relentless reminder of her loyalties. Can you truly bridge these worlds? Can you confront this challenge without erasing who you are? It spiraled into doubts that crept under her skin, overshadowing her growing passion. During late-night study sessions, she felt the sting of her rival's mockery echoing through her mind. Charity case. It crystallized her inner turmoil. She wasn't just a student, she was an embodiment of her culture, and these hallowed halls better recognized that. In her growing determination, Marisol decided to confront the land deal head-on. Hours spent poring over legal documents, public records, and local news stories revealed connections she had overlooked. Meetings scheduled with community elders expanded her resolve. Each one radiated wisdom, stories of their ancestors lingering like shadows, urging her to claim her voice boldly. The more she learned, the more her fear morphed into an energized resolve. They spoke of unity, of preserving what was rightfully theirs, and she became their advocate, sharing her findings with Professor Eldridge and other professors deeply invested in social justice. This collaboration ignited her spirit and spurred her towards a group presenting an able challenge against unethical practices. Now I can finally do something, she realized, sparking a wave of excitement that washed over her hesitations. This was the intersection of her academic ambitions and her cultural convictions. With her family's land endangered, she no longer saw her scholarship as a betrayal, but as a tool, something she could wield in a battle for recognition and preservation of her heritage. Yet, the looming threat of her rival still lingered like a specter, and confrontation seemed inevitable. Would he stand in her way, using the very privilege she sought to dismantle? The question marinated in her thoughts as she prepared for her first public presentation on her innovative project merging sustainable practices with traditional Apache methods. Standing before her peers, she felt both exhilaration and terror. This was a chance to redefine herself, to assert her identity rather than diminish it. She took a deep breath, ready to let her voice echo through the halls that had felt so foreign just days before. As she approached the podium, the tension in her mind collided with the energy of anticipation radiating from the audience. The moment of truth approached, her heart raced, and for the first time, fear felt exhilarating instead of paralyzing. Could she prove not only her worth, but also the rightful place of her people in the fabric of modern society? A sudden hush fell over the crowd, and all eyes were locked on her. And then she spoke. "Today, we reclaim what was lost." With her ancestral stories igniting the air, Marisol was not just fighting for her place at a prestigious university, but for an identity that had long been sidelined. Would this bold act herald a new chapter in her life, or would she draw the ire of those who opposed her? A wave of silence swept through the room as Marisol's voice reverberated, holding firm amidst the hushed anticipation. With each word, she wove her narrative tighter, intertwining personal conviction and ancestral legacy. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, the adrenaline pulsing as she ventured deeper into her realm of sustainable practices rooted in Apache traditions. The project had transformed from an assignment into a battle cry, a call to action that resonated not only with her peers, but deep within her soul. As the presentation flowed, she couldn't help but notice the shifting expressions in the crowd. Some gazed in curiosity, others challenged, and a handful of faces reflected disdain. Among the skeptics, her rival's mocking grin stood sharp, his presence a reminder of her doubts. Yet with each slide that illuminated the potential for sustainable living derived from her culture, she felt the cracks in that confidence solidify. She was no longer a charity case, she was an advocate. After her presentation concluded, applause erupted, claps tinged with enthusiasm and skepticism alike. Some classmates approached her, eager to engage, fostering an unexpected camaraderie. Yet, from across the room, her rival fixed his gaze. The smirk that had once rattled her transformed into something darker. "Nice speech," he sneered as he weaved through the crowd, cornering her with an intensity that sent tingles of apprehension up her spine. "But let's not kid ourselves. This is just an academic exercise for you, isn't it? An easy way to score brownie points." Marisol tightened her fists at her sides, teeth clenching against the impulse to retaliate. Deep down, she knew his words were steeped in the harsh realities of privilege versus struggle, of rejection versus acceptance. Instead of firing back, she forced her voice to steady. "This isn't just theory, and you know it. Maybe you should engage with it instead of dismissing it." With her heart racing, she realized that this encounter was pivotal. She could either sink back into uncertainty or rise, staking her claim as a genuine voice for her culture. As she gathered her thoughts, her resolve strengthened. Instead of backpedaling, she formulated a plan, a public challenge, a chance to show not only her peers the merit of her research, but to expose the shallow cynicism that many remained trapped in. The night after that presentation, Marisol sat at her desk, the soft glow of the lamp illuminating the pages strewn with her ideas. Ideas so profound, woven from the past, yet impactful enough to reach into the future. Among the notes, she found herself detailing the backlash she anticipated, preparing counterarguments that could bridge her peers' skepticism toward acknowledgement. She envisioned discussions that would peel back layers of ignorance and elevate her community's wisdom to a platform they deserved. But as she pushed through this intellectual rehabilitation, doubt invaded her thoughts once again. An impending sense of foreboding spread within. The deeper she engaged, the more her rival's influence weighed heavily on her, subtly undermining the very real progress she aimed to solidify. Then unexpectedly, an email notification pinged on her laptop. The subject line read, "Invitation to collaborate." Her pulse quickened as she opened it. An outreach from an environmental organization interested in her project. They sought collaboration to promote Native American practices in sustainable agriculture. This could be the opening she needed, the validation her cultural innovations required, an opportunity to showcase her heritage on a national scale. Yet she sensed the tension building. A duality lay ahead. Would working with outsiders dilute her intent, erasing part of herself in favor of a broader agenda? As she glanced back at her notes, the decision loomed, a chance to broaden the impact while holding true to her roots, or to risk losing her identity for a fleeting moment of recognition. With the sun setting outside her window, casting shadows across her desk, Marisol found herself at yet another crossroads. Would she take the leap towards collaboration, or rededicate herself solely to her community's cause? In that moment of contemplation, she realized the fears and expectations wouldn't disappear. They were now part of her journey. And just as she decided to respond with cautious interest, another thought pierced through her. One of her elders had warned her of manipulation disguised as opportunity. The weight of the decision pressed heavily on her, and the battle had only just begun. Would the allure of external validation propel her forward, or would it undermine everything she stood for? The clock ticked louder as she felt the walls closing in. While opportunities beckoned, so too did shadows of doubt. Marisol flexed her fingers over the keyboard, feeling the pulse of her cultural heritage surge within. And she knew this was just the beginning of a deeper conflict, one that could unravel everything if she wasn't careful. With one last glance at the blinking cursor, she wondered whether she was ready for the unseen challenges that lay ahead. Would she navigate this new terrain with the same determination she had shown on stage? The journey had only begun, and the shadows loomed larger than ever. Marisol sat frozen, the luminous screen before her blurring into a mere haze of lights and words. The invitation glowed with promise, a tantalizing opportunity, yet the weight of its implications bore down on her. Each pulse of her heart echoed a question. Was she truly ready for the complexities that a collaboration might entail? The words of her elder resonated in her mind like a distant warning bell, reminding her of the potential exploitation that lurked beneath the surface of well-meaning gestures. For a moment, she allowed herself to retreat into introspection, assessing her motivations. She asked herself what it truly meant to represent her culture. Was it simply sharing her traditional practices, or embodying the spirit of her people in a world that often reduced them to mere folklore? With dread creeping in, she realized that submitting to external forces could amount to a dilution of her identity, a risk too great to ignore. Despite the mental battle raging within her, a surge of inspiration ignited. She envisioned gathering her peers, fostering a space for candid discussion, where beliefs could be challenged and perceptions broadened. Perhaps she could turn this decision into a springboard for deeper exploration rather than succumbing to fear. To transform the potential collaboration into a genuine platform, she needed to control the narrative, to assert herself as the unquestionable authority on her heritage. Marisol abruptly shook off her hesitation and began typing out a response. Crafting her email with calculated precision, she articulated her interest in collaboration while stipulating terms that honored her cultural identity. She referenced past success stories of indigenous knowledge being integrated respectfully in contemporary frameworks, ensuring that her stance was clear. It was a vital step, not just for her, but for her people, a chance to carve out a space where their voice didn't just echo but resonated profoundly. After hitting send, she found her internal turmoil shift. Adrenaline pumped through her veins. Marisol had taken a pivotal step, not just in potential collaboration, but in claiming her place in this narrative. Yet with one decision made, she couldn't ignore the murky essence of her rivalry. The anticipation of backlash lurked in the back of her mind. Her rival would surely find fuel in any misstep she might take. Images of his mocking face haunted her thoughts. Why did his opinions matter so much? She recognized this as an urgent matter of self-acceptance, the need to detach her identity from his perceptions, to find strength in her uniqueness rather than see it as a flaw. Late into the night, she devised a plan for her next move. A community event showcasing Apache traditions, emphasizing their relevance in sustainable practices. It could serve two purposes: bridging the gap of misunderstanding among her peers while reaffirming her commitment to her roots. She envisioned not just a gathering, but an educational experience where dialogue sparked, and her heritage was celebrated beyond textbook narratives. With renewed clarity, Marisol embarked on research, her mind racing with ideas and strategy. She needed to devise a curriculum that included traditional ecologies and active demonstrations, an interactive platform where attendees could experience the traditions firsthand. Each detail, crafted with intention, would be a step toward unmasking the trivialization her culture often faced. Days turned into a feverish rush of orchestrating logistics, composing flyers, and rallying support from elders and community members alike. Yet, as the vision of this event took shape, she sensed the shadows twitching at the periphery of her ambition. What if her rival found a way to undermine her efforts? What if skepticism from her peers shifted into outright rejection? Every step forward uplifted her spirits, but doubt crept in, urging caution. How would she confront the challenge of delivering her message authentically while managing outside perceptions? With a sinking feeling, Marisol understood that this next phase demanded more than merely defending her work. It required her to act decisively, standing tall in the face of misunderstanding. As she prepared for the looming confrontation with her rival, one that was inevitable, she recognized that, above all, her battle was not merely against skepticism, but for her identity itself. The moment to face that reality was swiftly approaching, and as she stood poised at the threshold of this new chapter, anticipation coursing through her veins, she couldn't shake the feeling that the true test of her resilience lay just ahead, a struggle more profound than she had ever encountered. The upcoming event could either fortify her presence or become a stage for her worst fears to manifest. With determination hardening within, she took a deep breath, knowing that the moment to confront the tides of misunderstanding was near. Would her voice be enough to break the silence that sought to drown her out? Marisol awoke with the sun peeking through her window, the soft glow infusing her room with warmth. The invitation she had accepted felt less like an opportunity now, more like a challenge waiting to be tackled. As she faced the day's work, she felt a tide of mixed emotions. Excitement flared alongside a lingering anxiety. It was a pivotal moment for her, and she needed to be ready. Quickly getting dressed, she reflected on the meticulous plans she had drafted over the past week. Each detail was designed with care to ensure the authenticity of her culture would shine through. This wasn't merely about presenting traditions. It was about cultivating an environment where they could truly flourish. Yet that meant she would have to face her fears head-on. The possibility of her rival derailing her efforts loomed large, but she knew now was not the time to falter. At her favorite cafe, she spread out the flyers she had created, placing them strategically on the tables where customers frequently gathered. Each flyer represented a piece of her identity, an assertion of who she was as an Apache woman, and the stakes felt increasingly high. She leaned back and allowed herself a moment of pride. The words on the paper echoed the passion and history of her heritage. But the cafe buzzed with noisy chatter that underscored her loneliness in the crowd. Compounding her anxiety was the thought of engaging with others, needing to articulate her vision without faltering. She felt her heart race. Would they understand? Catching her reflection in the glass, she took note of the determination etched in her brow. The true measure of her growth didn't lie only in this event, but in her ability to stand firm against the judgments and misconceptions of others. Later that day, Marisol met with her mentor, an elder who had weathered many cultural storms herself. Her mentor's wisdom was an anchor for Marisol, grounding her amidst the tumult of doubt. You must remember, dear child, presenting your culture is not a performance but a declaration, her mentor advised. When you step into that space, let your voice encompass the strength of your people. Speak not just to be heard, but to resonate. Marisol absorbed each word, her resolve solidifying like concrete. Here was a direct challenge to her fears. The very essence of representation lay in her ability to connect deeply with her audience. Could she channel that energy into her presentation? Could she dismantle preconceived notions and give them a flash of authenticity? She spent hours crafting her speech, weaving narratives from her life that reflected her heritage but also her present struggles. This was not merely about teaching, it was about sharing experiences and inviting others into a genuine dialogue. The balance was delicate, but she was determined to manage it. Just as she was feeling more confident, the creeping tentacles of fear tangled around her thoughts. Maybe her rival was planning something. Perhaps he was lying in wait, ready to pounce. Yet, the fear would not deter her. Marisol realized that she needed to transform her anxiety into a call to action. She would anticipate the void left by others' misunderstandings, filling it with clarity and conviction. The night before the event, she positioned herself in front of the mirror, practiced her speech, all while the familiar whispers of doubt threatened to rear their heads. This isn't about them, she told her reflection, locking her gaze as she spoke. This is for you, Marisol. This is for your heritage. This is your moment. As she drifted off to sleep, a steely determination wound its way into her dreams. She knew the challenges ahead would test not just her professional capabilities, but her belief in herself. Was she truly prepared to step into her full power, to face both admiration and possible scorn? The thought rolled over in her mind like an incoming wave. Tomorrow would be a test of her resolve as much as it would be an exploration of the roots she held so dear. As anticipation buzzed in her veins, Marisol understood. The confrontation with her rival was not just about defense. It was about embracing the totality of who she was. And in the folds of that knowledge, a new fear grabbed hold. What if her words fell flat? What if no one listened? Would her voice rise above the cacophony of doubt? The answer to that question awaited her on the morrow, and with it, the battle for her recognition, identity, and legacy lay vast and unknown. Marisol awoke to the sound of her own heartbeat drumming in her ears. Morning's light spilled across her room like an omen, casting shadows that danced on the walls, mocking her uncertainty. Every fiber of her being tingled, not just with the anticipation of a new day, but with the urge to seize the raw potential lying within her. Standing before her closet, she fought the instinct to retreat into safe choices. Instead, she selected an outfit that bore her heritage, a traditional Apache shawl she had woven herself. It wrapped around her shoulders like armor, a reminder of the strength imbued in every fiber. As she dressed, her determination crystallized. This would not just be a mere presentation, it was to be an assertion of her identity. Over breakfast, she meticulously reviewed her notes, feeling the weight of each word. They were not merely bullet points or rehearsed lines, they were bridges she was building to connect with her audience. Let them feel, she whispered to herself, acknowledging that every speech was an opportunity to evoke emotion, to inspire action. The drive to the venue felt interminable as nerves coiled tightly in her stomach. Each lane she passed became a mental battlefield, demanding her focus amidst waves of doubt that tried to push through. She knew she could articulate her vision, yet the fear gnawed at her, taunting her self-assurance with thoughts of failure. If I falter today, how will I regain footing? She murmured, grappling with the implications of standing frozen while others thrived. As she arrived, Marisol was met with an excited crowd. The chatter buzzed like static in her mind, amplifying her previous misgivings. She caught sight of her rival, leaning against the wall, an unexpected spectre. The self-assured smirk on his face sent a shiver down her spine. Instinctively, she measured her own worth against his projected bravado, questioning her readiness. What if he hijacked her moment? Could she truly convey the essence of her culture beneath the weight of his disdain? Like a tightening fist, uncertainty gripped her. She tore her gaze away from him and sought solace in the faces of those who had gathered, noticing the diverse assembly. There was vulnerability in that shared space. They were searching for connection as much as she was. Realizing this, she felt a shift within herself. These weren't merely strangers, they were potential allies in understanding. Having fortified her resolve, Marisol stepped toward the audience, allowing the electric tension to invigorate her. She opened with a personal story, a vivid recollection from her childhood that painted a picture of her culture's resilience. The atmosphere warmed and her voice began to resonate through the crowd. Yet, as she spoke, she glimpsed her rival's eyes, cold and calculating. He stood at the back, arms crossed, whispering to a few of his followers, orchestrating speculation. With each passing moment of her speech, she felt a surge of defiance mingled with a hint of fear. The knowledge that antagonism lingered at her back became fuel rather than a hindrance. This isn't about proving him wrong, she decided mid-sentence, but rather about embodying the truth of who I am. The words flowed more freely, unfurling like a banner in the wind. With each story, she wove in elements of struggle, celebration, and resilience interspersed with her lived experiences as a modern Apache woman. Her vibrant heart invigorated her, and the audience responded, their shifting expressions revealing growing curiosity. Why should I doubt? She thought fervently. Midway through her narrative, a sudden tremor of anxiety surged as she stumbled upon a particularly sensitive subject, one that revealed scars, challenges, and misunderstandings. Moments like these would define her leap into authenticity. It required courage to bare her soul before an audience that could judge or empathize. Then, amidst her storytelling, she spotted her rival moving toward the front, brimming with audacious intent. Was he going to challenge her? It stirred an instinct not to back down, but to prepare for the crescendo of this confrontation. Whatever happens, I will make my voice heard, she resolved, her pulse quickening in unwavering steadiness. The weight of her history and heritage bore down on her, pushing her to rise. This moment was hers, one she would not easily relinquish. Just as she was mounting her climax, ready to confront the intricacies of her identity, the audience's attention shifted, a ripple of confusion whispering through the thrumming hearts before her. The tension swirling was palpable. The ground beneath shifted, not merely by words, but by hidden tensions poised to erupt. Marisol, I challenge your views. Her rival's voice rang out, tremulous yet sharp, laced with a threat that intertwined deceit with bravado. The moment had arrived, and her world tilted as the ground beneath her feet gave way to uncertainty. How would she respond? Would she rise to the occasion, or falter in her pursuit for understanding? The battle for her recognition was on the precipice of chaos, just as the fog of doubt threatened to obscure her path when clarity was essential. One thing was clear, the stakes were now higher than ever. Marisol's breath caught in her throat as her rival's words echoed through the hall like a thunderclap, reverberating in the silence that followed. The faces in the audience transformed. Expressions shifted from supportive anticipation to a mix of curiosity and apprehension. She felt the heat rise in her cheeks, the impulse to retreat clawing at her. But as her gaze met the sea of eyes before her, an immense wave of resolve surged inside. Challenge my views? She said, allowing her voice to ripple through the crowd, gaining volume and confidence. You aren't just challenging my views, you're challenging the very heritage that shaped me. Why don't you tell us all? What do you stand for? The boldness of her response surprised even herself. Instead of crumbling, she found a fierce satisfaction in claiming the spotlight not just for her own narrative, but in countering the undermining force directed at her. She could feel the room shift. Anticipation wove itself through the silence like a current, ready to carry her onward. Marisol, he replied, pushing through a clenched jaw. Your stories are beautiful, but they are not representative of the struggle we face in this society. You romanticize what's broken, selling it to an audience waiting to consume your pain without truly understanding it. As his challenge hung in the air, Marisol sensed the sharp edges of doubt beginning to dissolve in the heat of conviction. You speak of struggle, she fired back, her posture firming. But what do you know about resilience? About rising from ashes to redefine oneself? It's not merely survival, it's transformation. With each word, she drew on the turbulent tides of her past. The early mornings spent weaving with her grandmother, the laughter mingling with teachings of humility, persistence, and pride. Each thread in her shawl told stories that defied the idea of mere survival. The resilience resided in the heart, where hope intermingled with scars. His eyes darkened, a flicker of unease betraying his facade. Inspired by the collective energy around her, Marisol embraced the moment. She continued unfurling her narrative, delicately surrounding her audience with experiences that resonated deeply, moments when despair clamored for dominance, and yet hope found its place in the sun. I stand not on the edge of acceptance, but on the precipice of rebirth, fueled by the sacrifice of those who came before me. In this fierce confrontation, she was not just defending herself. She was asserting the truth that lived within her heritage. Marisol's confidence swelled, each word igniting her passion. The audience began leaning forward, lending their energy to her own. She could see understanding flickering within them, the walls of her rival's argument crumbling. The imperative weight of her culture, of its stories passed down, surged forth from her heart, and she molded them in such a way that he couldn't dismantle them without revealing the hollowness of his challenge. Yet with every syllable, Marisol felt the gaze of her rival searing into her, a calculated reckoning like a predator assessing its prey. What more could he possibly unleash? As she pressed onward, she contemplated the possibility of what this moment meant beyond mere conflict. It wasn't only a fight for respect, it was an opportunity for growth, a vital ingredient for her budding self-identity. Perhaps, he interjected, his voice steeling, we should consider how your romanticized notions hold us back from real solutions. People rely heavily on what you present, yet our circumstances demand action, not storytelling. His words hung heavily. For a moment, uncertainty tugged at her. Was he right? Did her work risk romanticizing the struggles instead of facilitating change? How could she combine her passion for storytelling with the authenticity of their fight? The questions festered, yet within that turbulence lay an opportunity for deeper self-reflection. Stories are my solutions, she challenged, embracing the internal conflict. They shine light on truths that the world needs to face. They invoke empathy and understanding, pulling together what seems torn apart. In that moment, realization washed over her. She could advocate for change while preserving the essence of her identity. But what would that look like? Would the boldness of her stories be enough? Facing her rival, she realized she was not just confronting him, she was challenging herself to intertwine narratives of resilience with actionable solutions. As she stepped back, adrenaline coursing through her, the audience buzzed with contemplative murmurs and shifting silhouettes in their seats. This confrontation had unearthed layers of herself she hadn't anticipated. Just then, as the air thickened with tension, a hand shot up from the crowd, sparking a definitive question that would either reignite the fray or shift its focus entirely. What will you do next, Marisol? The voice rang clear, an urgent plea for direction. The weight of it hung heavy in the air. She could pivot now, be reactive, or construct a new pathway forward. The moment had come, and as her heart raced, she felt the potential for an entirely new chapter unfolding before her. Would she forge ahead with boldness, confronting not just her rival, but also the systemic barriers that sought to silence her voice? Marisol's heart thudded violently against her ribs as she faced the crowd, the question resonating within her like a drumbeat, urging her toward clarity. This was her moment, a crossroads veiled in uncertainty, yet illuminated by the emerging confidence that had begun its quiet ascent. The doubt that threatened to swamp her like a tide morphed into a concentrated determination. You want solutions? She began, grounding her feet firmly on the spot as if she were rooted in the earth itself. Then let's talk about how we narrate our own stories and use those narratives to fuel change. The resolve laced in her voice sliced through the doubt hanging palpably in the air. She felt no longer as if she were merely fending off her rival's criticism. She was invoking a discourse that demanded attention. The audience hung on every word, shifting forward as if pushed by an invisible force. In that moment, Marisol became acutely aware of the responsibility entrusted to her. She'd envisioned her stories as bearers of truth, yet understood that weaving those truths into tangible progress was an inevitable evolution. But how? She pressed on, internally wrestling with the forms her storytelling would take. How do we ensure our voices echo loudly enough to spur real change? Do we merge facts with hope? What if we shifted our framework? Our stories must not simply reflect our struggles, but lay out actionable paths forward, intertwining our history with the demands of today? As her words gained momentum, an idea began to crystallize in her mind. She saw her narratives transforming into a blueprint, one that illustrated the intersection of her heritage and contemporary challenges. Realizing it wasn't just enough to tell her story, she had to turn it into a manifesto that could provoke thought, inspire action, and embolden others to rise alongside her. Let's challenge the narratives fed to us by those who seek to diminish our power. Let's craft a saga that embodies resilience in action, she declared, her voice firm and unyielding. She envisioned a series of workshops and talks, perhaps even a collection of her stories binding together the threads of their shared experience, with practical implications that spoke directly to the conditions she had once felt so confined by. Yet as her thoughts began to cascade into intricate plans, a flicker of fear grazed her. Was she truly equipped to undertake such an endeavor? Could she synthesize her passion for storytelling with the martial energy of change-making? The whispers of self-doubt wrestled at her edges, but were overshadowed by a burgeoning excitement. Your stories can be powerful tools, she affirmed to herself as she drew strength from the memories of her grandmother's teachings. The resilience that defined her lineage coursed through her, solidifying her belief in the potential for rebirth, her platform not just as a storyteller, but as an agent of action. As the murmurs of the audience began to rise, she realized they were not just watching a debate unfold. They were witnessing her metamorphosis. They were a part of this evolution, these ideas blooming in their minds just as surely as they blossomed in her own. Marisol could feel their curiosity and hope intertwining with her determination. Join me as we stand at this nexus of story and action, she continued, her heart surging with adrenaline. Let's share our truths and find strength in vulnerability, while also mobilizing efforts to change what we can. This is not merely about our past, it's about shaping our future. The applause that erupted was a fierce acknowledgement of her challenge, but amid the gratitude and resolve, she noticed her rival's expression sharpen. The storm was far from over. Resistance was imminent, and her next move would require a step beyond rhetoric. With her sights now set towards possibilities unfurling ahead, an unexpected knot formed in her stomach. What awaited on the other side of this newfound manifesto? Marisol sensed the urgency to solidify her plans, not just to refute her rival, but also to realize a burgeoning dream, a vision she couldn't quite define but needed to explore. As she scanned the audience, their faces reflected the importance of the moment. The next question hung in the air, potent and promising, teasing what more she could unearth. "How can we follow your lead, Marisol?" a voice shouted, summoning clarity amid the chaos. The challenge was set. The path ahead shimmered with uncertainty, yet it beckoned her fiercely forward, the weight of her heritage propelling her from behind. Would she rise to the occasion, or would her fears hold her back once again? Marisol stood at the precipice of possibility, the weight of expectation heavy on her shoulders. The excitement radiating from the audience was infectious, but beneath the surface lay an undercurrent of tension. The question had ignited not just her ambitions, but also a profound sense of responsibility. How could she distill her thoughts into something actionable, something that could galvanize her audience into tangible change? In the days that followed, Marisol dove deep into her plans. She spent countless hours sketching outlines for workshops designed to empower others in the art of storytelling, aiming to create not just a series of events, but an enduring movement. With a mixture of trepidation and exhilaration, she began transforming her ideas into outlines, questions that pushed boundaries, and exercises that would summon the strength of personal narratives. Yet late at night when silence fell, that familiar spectre of self-doubt loomed large. What if her voice wasn't compelling enough? What if the stories she wanted to uncover were buried too deep in pain to rise? In those moments of solitude, shadows of uncertainty whispered that maybe she wasn't the right person for this task after all. Determined not to yield to fear, she reached out to her mentors, those who had believed in her, even when she struggled to believe in herself. Each connection served as a form of reinforcement, each conversation igniting a flicker of clarity. One mentor's voice stood out as she spoke of resilience. "Marisol, your voice is not about perfection, it's about honesty." With renewed vigor, Marisol understood that the authenticity of her experiences, struggles, triumphs, and everything in between could empower others to tap into their resilience as well. As she outlined her manifesto, she focused on the threads binding her heritage to the present day. The more she wrote, the more she began recognizing the value of her experiences. In every keystroke, she discovered hidden competencies. Her ability to listen, to empathize, to weave complex emotions into relatable narratives. It dawned on her that authentic storytelling was as much about vulnerability as it was about strength. The thought struck her like a bolt of lightning. What if her platform wasn't limited to the spoken word? What if she expanded into a digital realm, shared through blogs and social media, crafting narratives that encouraged others to share their own? This realization was intoxicating. Every heartbeat thrummed with potential. Her vision began to morph into a blueprint that traversed boundaries, exploring the myriad ways personal stories could inspire collective action. Still, as she immersed herself in this wave of inspiration, her rival loomed in the background. Marisol recalled the fierce countenance that had pointedly scrutinized her each step of the way. It was a stark reminder that her efforts would not go unchecked. The dynamic felt visceral and personal, igniting a fire within her that craved to tackle this head-on. With each passing day, her confidence swelled, twisted inextricably with the shadow of her rival's critiques and the promise of her ambitions. But the question remained ever-present. Would her manifesto resonate? Time trickled away, drawing closer the moment she would need to present her ideas for the first time in public. Marisol gathered her materials, electric anticipation thrumming just beneath her skin. She knew this moment would define her, not only by confronting her rival, but also by embracing the unique voice she was finally claiming. As she stood before a mirror in the dim light of her workshop space, she whispered to herself, "Today, I become what I have always been meant to be." The empowering mantra solidified within her, igniting a spark of boldness she had never known. But beneath the resolve lurked a haunting question that teased the edges of her confidence. What if this journey uncovered truths she wasn't ready to confront? With her manifesto charged and ready, Marisol stepped toward the unknown, heart racing in expectation of what would unfold next. Would the truth of her narrative liberate her, or would it ensnare her deeper into the fight she had only just begun? Marisol stood poised at the front of the packed auditorium, each gaze in the room filled with anticipation as she prepared to unveil her manifesto. The verdant echo of her heritage pulsed through her veins, a melding of ancestral wisdom and contemporary necessity. The urge to withdraw was palpable, yet today she chose to unfurl her wings rather than retract them. As she began to speak, her voice held a steady timbre, resonating with conviction. Today, I invite you to traverse a journey with me, not just as passive listeners, but as empowered participants in reshaping the narrative that has often sidelined our stories. Each word poured forth like a cascade, melding the vibrant colors of her tradition with the stark realities of modern challenges. The audience leaned in, and with their attention, her anxiety morphed into an electrifying energy that swirled around her. Marisol articulated the vision behind her initiative, meticulously outlining the workshops that would lay a foundation for storytelling as a catalyst for change. We will not merely recount our hardships, we will build bridges through dialogue and action, she declared, a newfound fervor surging within her. Together, our narratives will carve a path to advocacy and understanding, one where the threads of our heritage interweave seamlessly with the aspirations we hold. As the applause erupted following her presentation, Marisol felt both exhilaration and a sense of impending validation. For the first time, she had shared not only her experiences, but the embrace of her cultural identity as a powerful force for action. It became clear that she was no longer standing on the sidelines, wishing for acceptance. She was actively creating a pathway for herself and others. Yet among the claps and cheers, she noticed him. Her rival, his expression a sardonic mask concealing an unmistakable agitation. "So what now, Marisol?" he called from the back, his tone draped in skepticism. "Are you truly expecting these stories to drive change? You think a few workshops are going to shift the tides?" Breathing deeply, she met his gaze head-on. "Don't underestimate the power of shared narratives. They are the bedrock of understanding. And if there's anything I've learned, it's that change often begins with a single voice proclaiming that it matters." The audience responded with murmurs of agreement, energy rippling through the crowd as they engaged with her challenge. With renewed intensity, she dove into her vision. "We will host community discussions, educational modules, and collaborative initiatives aimed at tangible solutions. Each participant will have their voice amplified, no longer just an observer, but an integral part of the conversation." Her heart raced as she unveiled the plans to initiate outreach programs focusing on environmental sustainability grounded in Apache traditions. The excitement in the room was palpable, a collective momentum propelling her forward. After the presentation, attendees approached her with enthusiasm, eager to participate and collaborate on future endeavors. Their support acted as an anodyne to the lingering shadows of doubt that had once clung to her. Marisol felt herself transforming, each interaction fortifying her confidence, affirming her capabilities, and validating her purpose. Yet, as the evening unfolded, doubt still lurked in the backdrop. Have I done enough? Can my voice truly affect the change we need? The anxiety tried to settle in, a reminder of her past struggles, but this time she met it with resolve. She had successfully bridged her identities. An Apache woman with a scholarship, an advocate with a message. 1 week later, she stood in front of a handful of participants, each with unique stories and experiences, ready to engage. This was not just her journey, it was theirs. A tapestry woven together by shared narratives and the promise of a collective future. They discussed challenges and dreams, fears and aspirations, each thread of their stories illuminating new pathways toward understanding and action. As the workshop unfolded, Marisol realized the palpable power that storytelling had to foster connection. With each narrative exchanged, she could witness the insecurities dissipate, her peers emboldened by the very act of sharing their truths. In that transient moment of collective empowerment, she felt more grounded than ever, not just in herself, but in her community's strength. Through the weeks that followed, her workshops gained traction, a community blossoming around the shared intent to dismantle biases and build bridges. Her rival faded into a distant memory. A recurrent challenge receded in the wake of her success. Marisol had achieved what she set out to do, a platform for stories, a validated space for her culture. Marisol stood finally at a gathering that felt like a culmination of her growth, acknowledgement from peers, mentorship from elders, and validation of her voice within the institution. When an award was presented to her for outstanding cultural contributions to the university, she walked to the podium not as a charity case, but as a proud advocate of her heritage and an established force in academia. As she grasped the award, tears shimmered in her eyes, not of sorrow, but of profound joy. She understood that this moment encapsulated not just her achievement, but the culmination of resilience and transformation, the tangible manifestation of everything she had worked to overcome. She took a deep breath and smiled at the crowd. Today is not just my victory, it belongs to all of us. The applause enveloped her, a symphony of recognition that resonated deep within. This was more than personal growth. It was a testament to the power of stories and their potential to uplift and unite. Standing tall, she beckoned to the audience, inviting them to join her journey. Together, let's not just share our stories, but build a future where every narrative is honored, every voice empowered. And with that, she felt an undeniable truth settle in her heart. She had not only transformed herself, but had ignited a spark for change in the lives of many. Now was the time to act. Your support is crucial. You need to subscribe now to witness the unfolding of more incredible stories of personal growth and triumph. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure these powerful narratives reach those who need them. Comment your thoughts and theories about Marisol's amazing journey. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who could benefit from this inspiring conclusion. Let's amplify voices and celebrate victories together.